Hello, Steve White, Trek Boy 89 for Steve Arts 89. Well, I finished Star Trek Enterprise. I watched season 4 and I had to do a little review. Um, Season 4 gets a lot of credit. A lot of people like it, and I do like it as well, but it's an interesting one because the first two seasons I really liked because they were just going out exploring new things, adventures. It was interesting. The third season tried to do a season-long arc and tried to be some sort of response to September 11 and be Deep Space Nine or something, or War Trek. It didn't work in part because they did a lot of standalone episodes, so they sort of failed. But that saved the season because there are actual episodes, to enjoy rather than just, parts, chapters in an overall story that maybe you're not interested in. But season 4 was like a return, sort of like a return to, Enterprise. So season 1 and 2, where it was the standalone episodes, stories in a way, but then they did them. I did a bunch of arcs, little mini arcs. They did the Vulcan arc. They did the Klingon arc, or that was only 2 episodes. They did the Augments. They did the Mars Isolationists, and what else was the other one? I don't know. They did a bunch of standalone episodes, and they also did these. They did a few standalone episodes, and I always forget about the standalone episodes like Del Deus or whatever it's called. I forget about them. I just sort of remember the arcs, and I always think of the season as just being these little stories of 2 to 3 episodes. But they did try and pull on the original series and its connections to and leading up to, and that's something that everyone credits it to. But there are a couple of times I was looking at that and thinking, this is one of the things we criticise Strange New Worlds for. So Strange New Worlds does it all the time and does it badly, but they did do it a couple of times. And watching it, I'm like, okay, this didn't bother me before. In fact, I celebrate it. Now I look at it a little differently. I'm not quite sure why. Now, the issues with the season, because it was prematurely the final season. They were supposed to do at least 5 seasons, maybe 7. The cast assumed they'd go on to 7. I think they'd only planned 5. But they were supposed to be leading up to the forming of the Federation, and they sort of had to rush that a bit. And the last episode I thought was a good way to sort of show how things ended off. And a lot of people look down on it, have issues with it. But I feel like it is a good bookend to the whole era, the whole Berman era. And I don't have the issues with it that some of the cast did. Like, I met Jolene just after they'd finished filming and talked to her about it, and she was very open about how she thought about it. And there's a couple of shots when it's like, you can just see that she's just seething, or just really just when they had to play holograms of themselves and had to freeze, stuff like that. They really had problems with it, and I, on one level, don't blame them, but at another level, they have to realise that this was, and they probably didn't realise it at the time, this was the end of a whole era. And a lot of us didn't realise this was going to be the last Star Trek, because we just thought there'd be another Star Trek, maybe there'd be a break, because they sort of had crossover and they had end to end, and then I thought, well, maybe we'll have a couple of years and then we'll come back with another Star Trek. And they never came back. We never got another Star Trek. We got a reboot, and we got a different alternative universe version, and we never really went back to the original canon universe again, and that Star Trek that we'd grown up with, that we had learned so much about and loved, and that just got thrown out like it was worth nothing. And then they just tried to make a new Star Trek for new audiences, new people, because apparently we didn't matter to them, the fans didn't matter, and they just threw us out. So it was very jarring, because there were protests, there were writing letter campaign sort of things, trying to get Star Trek Enterprise renewed, and they even they earned a lot of money, donated a lot of money to a third season, and a lot of things were happening, and it was a sad time, but we didn't know how bad it was going to be. Like I said, I thought there'd be another Star Trek eventually, like in a couple of years. I really didn't think this was the last Star Trek, but I'm glad that they ended it perfectly with the very, very end, of course, with the 3 main starships You know, and the When No Man's Gone Before speech split over the main sort of three captains, Enterprise captains from that era, and I do like the series. I find the mini arcs are just enough to get involved, because there's one two-parter, but the rest are like three-part ones, and it just gives you enough to really draw you in and get you involved, and there's enough meat on the bone, to sort of enjoy. Whereas having a whole season one story, you just have filler chapter parts that just don't work. There's like sometimes you have one-off episodes that can't get enough into the story or are sort of throwaway. So there's good and bad. But overall, I love the season, and I'm going to do my episode by episode review as well after this. But I just had to do my separate little review of it. It's good, and of course, seeing the original Enterprise and all of that was great. But yeah.